Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is the 5th official episode of True Crime with Burgenne. If you are listening on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast, thank you so much for being here. I love you. Please follow my page and review my podcast. It helps me out a ton. If you are here on YouTube, thank you so much for being here for my first YouTube video. I'm going to try to do these for every single podcast episode. And if you are here from TikTok, I just posted the short version of the story on TikTok, but I wanted to give you guys like the full in-depth nitty-gritty version on my podcast and YouTube. And if you have any comments or thoughts on this case, feel free to comment them on whatever you're watching or listening on, because I love hearing your guys' thoughts and chatting with you guys about the different cases I cover. Okay, so today we are talking about Melissa Dohme. And Melissa is an incredibly strong, intelligent, amazing woman who survived a horrific cycle of abuse, manipulation, and literally attempted murder. She is going to go through a lot. So I'm just going to get right into it so that we can get this story started. So this story really begins when Melissa was still in high school as a teenager. She lived with her two parents and her siblings. She was the youngest sibling out of all the kids. She was a good kid. She was known for being very driven in school, very kind. She took college classes while still in high school. She had a job. She wanted to save up for a car, pay for her own gas, and she also loved to be with her family. So very independent, strong-willed, but still like a very kind, sweet person. In her junior year of high school, she ended up dating a guy by the name of Robert Burton. And Robert was a senior at her high school. And I think everyone knows how it is in high school. You always want to date the older guy. It makes you feel cool. It makes you feel like more special. So she ends up dating someone who's a senior when she is a junior. They end up dating for the rest of his senior year and then after that as well. So after he graduates. And I'm just going to tell you right now, he sucks. He is the worst kind of guy. We are going to hate him. Just start to hate him now. Don't even waste your time trying to like him at the beginning. He is awful. He is the problem with this story. You're gonna hate him. Like, he sucks. But before we actually discover he is garbage, he seemed like a sweet guy. Like, he knew her family. They spent a lot of time together. They thought he was great. It seemed like Melissa and Robert were just two young kids in love, very happy, and again, no one had a problem with Robert. He seemed to really like Melissa. The family was happy. And Robert had some stuff going on with his own home, so he spent a lot of time at Melissa's house with her family. So they were very used to him being around. And again, for a long time, they really liked him. Unfortunately, as months went on, their relationship started to get a little rocky. When she was a senior in high school, he's now graduated, she discovers that he has been smoking cigarettes behind her back. And the problem with this is that she had already expressed that she didn't like him smoking cigarettes, and he made up these elaborate lies to continue smoking. They were together all the time, and he still was finding a way to elaborately lie. Smoking cigarettes, like, they smell. It's not an easy habit to hide when you're with your partner all the time. So she was very upset about the fact that he's like making up these elaborate lies to find time to smoke and then hiding the smell. So she really wasn't happy about that, but he promised he would stop and that was the only lie, and that was it. And she was like, okay, I'm gonna forgive him. I get it. Let's move on. At the same time, though, he's starting to get a little bit more controlling and manipulative. So she is working really, really hard in school, and she ends up getting accepted into like her dream college. But he convinces her, don't go to that dream college, stay at the community college so you can be close to me. And this dude is like a deadbeat. He's not working. He could have packed up and went with her to the college. Like, he's just a really crappy guy. So she stays and goes to this community college, even though it's not really what she wanted, but she convinced herself that it was for him. And she's pursuing nursing. She's always wanted to help people, so she's going to nursing school. Again, as she is like in college and working on having a career and a future, he's getting more and more controlling and manipulative. He starts trying to isolate her from friends and family, and he starts questioning everything she's doing, and just really classic, like, controlling behavior. And he would just question everything she was doing. And then he also started to like demean and degrade her in front of their friends and family. So he would like insult her directly in front of her family. Clearly not a good guy. He's an awful small man who needs to tear down women to feel better about himself. And unfortunately, Melissa's the woman that he is tearing down. She is working at a hospital to put herself through nursing school. And after a while, he would just start showing up to her work. And this was not like a cute thing where he'd bring her coffee or lunch and visit for a few minutes and then leave. No, he would show up at her work, for hours and just watch her and like ask her what she's doing, who she's talking to, and like try to control whatever she was doing at work. And he would cause these big scenes because she'd be like, can you please leave? What are you doing here? Like, I'm trying to be professional. This is my place of work. This is really weird that you're just hanging out for hours. And they would have these like big scenes or these big blowouts or fights at her place of work. And that probably was so embarrassing and belittling for her that her boyfriend, her deadbeat boyfriend, just comes to work, degrades her, questions her for hours, and then like causes a scene. In 2011, though, they end up going on a trip to the beach with some friends and family, and again, they'd been together about 2 years at this point. So on this trip, her and Robert were walking up the hill to their car, and he was being mean to her, essentially. He was picking on her. She asks him to stop, and he's picking on her to belittle her. It's not like a funny ha-ha couples moment. He was doing it because he got embarrassed with something that was talked about while they were with their friends. So he is trying to, like, degrade her and pick on her in a mean way. She's asking him to stop, and he's not. So she ends up kind of, like, running away from him and being like, leave me alone. And he won't. He's picking on her, and they end up getting into it, getting in a fight, and he shoves her down this hill that they were walking up. She ends up tumbling down this hill, getting hurt, getting scraped up, and instead of like running to help her like a good boyfriend, he runs back to the friends and says like, oh my god, she fell down this hill, like I don't know how that happened. And so the friends come running over to see if she's okay. Unfortunately, I mean, obviously, other than the fact that her boyfriend just pushed her down this hill and she's got some scrapes and bruises, she's okay overall. Like, there are no serious injuries, thankfully. But he's saying she fell down this hill by accident. And she's like, no, I didn't. You just pushed me. And then, because she says that he pushed her, he starts screaming and being like, you're lying. I didn't push you. Why are you trying to make me sound bad? And, like, causes this whole scene. All the friends are like, we don't know what to do. It's super awkward. So her sister was actually there, and she ends up taking her home, and the friends kind of like separate them. But now this relationship that went from like manipulative and controlling is now turning physically violent. That is not good. And so she is like, I don't know that I want to be with him anymore. I think we should call it like and break it off. And she's just like not feeling it. But unfortunately, when she tries to like break it off with him, since he just like physically harmed her, he ends up starting to threaten that he's gonna hurt himself or commit suicide if she leaves him. She still tries to like stay away from him even after he threatens this, but like it ends up working and she ends up going back to him. So they are back together because he threatened to hurt himself if she left. This is now when the physical abuse really begins. He knows at this point he has a level of control over her, and he totally uses that. So now he's physically abusive and controlling. It's spiraling. It's getting worse. Not only was he physically harming her, he also was mentally and emotionally harming her and continuing to isolate her. She's cutting herself off from the family more and more to try to hide the fact that he's like hurting her. She still is living with her family, but she's still being isolated from them even when she lives under the same roof with them. One night, they were at her parents' house. It sounds like the parents probably weren't home because I think they would have like noticed this going on and gotten involved. But they were at her house and they get into a fight. And he ends up getting on top of her and starts strangling her. And this fight was not over something important. Like, it was something small and petty. And he starts strangling her. She's terrified for her life. And at some point, she ends up, like, managing to get free, stands up and runs out the door into the front yard. And she is, like, crying and yelling because he seemingly just tried to like kill her or at least severely harm her, and that's terrifying. So she's crying and yelling, and he's shouting at her that she's making a scene, she's embarrassing him, to come back inside and like to behave better, basically, which is ridiculous because he's the problem and he's making it her fault somehow. He ends up convincing her to come back inside, and he ends up pulling out a knife and starts telling her that if she doesn't stop crying and making a scene, he will kill her. And he says, if you ever try to leave me or run away again, I will kill you. And so now it's gone from just him threatening to harm himself to him threatening to literally murder her if she doesn't listen. And there's just so much manipulation and control, and this is such a classic thing that we see with domestic violence and like violent relationships, and it's a cycle that's very hard to get out of. So she is petrified, and she's likely feeling very much stuck in this relationship at this point. On October 25th of 2011, a few months after that first altercation where he pushed her down the hill, they end up going to a friend's party, and on the way home they get in a huge fight, and he ends up grabbing her phone and keys and starting to like throw them around the yard. It's the middle of the night. I think he's trying to like degrade her and make her feel like embarrassed, because it sounds like in the fight he was feeling like a weak little man, and to make himself feel better he was trying to make her be embarrassed. So he's throwing her stuff all around the yard and making her like run around and get it, and she's yelling at him to stop because of course he's being a jerk, like he's being awful. So she's yelling at him to stop, and he's saying like, don't make a scene, you're being ridiculous. And at one point he ends up punching her to try to get her to be quiet, and she falls to the floor. And at this point he just starts absolutely wailing on her, like just beating her senseless essentially. Thankfully she somehow manages to kick him in the crotch. She gets up and she starts to run away, and she pulls out her phone and dials 911. In this moment, though, his manipulation and control really shows, because even though she's literally being beat by this man, she still hesitates to actually press send on the 911 call. Because he keeps threatening to kill himself or her or hurt her if she tries to leave him, she's feeling like this 911 call could be more dangerous than just staying with him and sucking it up, because he told her to not ever leave him. So this is a really dangerous situation for her to be in. So she hesitates calling 911, but then sees him start to run after her, and she's like, I have to get out of this. So she calls 911 and starts running down the road. He is chasing her. She is running. She is sobbing on the phone, being like, he is going to kill me. Please send help. Like, I am in danger here. The dispatcher, first of all, hate the dispatcher. They did not handle this call correctly. They did not seem to care about her at all. But she's calling for help, asking them like, when are the police going to get here? Please, he's going to hurt me. And at one point, as she's talking to them, she realizes like he's no longer following her. And for a second, she's probably feeling relief, because like she's safe. She's looking around for him. She doesn't see him. Like, thank goodness, because obviously like he probably could have outrun her after a while. So for a second, it's probably relief. And then she realizes that he still has her house keys, and he is violent and mean, and her whole family is inside sleeping because it's the middle of the night. So now she's terrified that this horrific man is going to kill her family to get back at her for leaving him. And so she turns back around. All thoughts of her own safety go out the window, and she's like, I gotta go protect my family. So she starts sprinting back to the house, worried he's already done something to them. And as she gets back to the house, he actually was hiding in a bush, and he jumps out. He was waiting for her to come back because he knew she would, and he starts assaulting her and wailing on her and beating her again. Fortunately, he isn't able to do too much before the police actually pull up, and they witness him doing this. So like, it's concrete evidence that he was harming her. Like there's no questioning it. There's no he said, she said. Like, the police see him harming her. And he literally shouts at her, you seriously called the police on me? Like, how could you do that to me? As if he's the victim here. So he is arrested. They take him away, and the police officers sit down with her, and they're like, this cycle of abuse will not stop. You cannot fix him. He will not stop no matter how many times he apologizes. If he's willing to hit you once, he will hit you again. If you continue to stay with him, this cycle will continue. We will see you again. He could kill you. Please leave him. This cycle will only continue. And she's like, I understand. You're right. Like, I need to get out. And so she's like, we're done. We're done. We're broken up. I'm never seeing him again. The next day, he gets out of jail. He's released after doing this horrific thing to her. And he calls her and he's like, hey, can you come pick me up from jail after assaulting you? She says, absolutely not. She's like, leave me alone. We're done. I don't want anything to do with you. And she like leaves him. But like, the audacity to call the person that you just beat, that they like had to call the police on you. You're in jail because you were harming them, and then you call them and ask to like pick you up. The audacity of this man is just ridiculous. So she ends up being like done with him. Again, this incident happened like in October, and she doesn't really see him for a few months. I'm sure he was like reaching out, trying to like manipulate her and like get her back in any way he could, but she was staying away from him. And it wasn't until January 23rd that one night she does end up communicating with him. So he had a court date the next day for this incident, for the assault on her. And she got a call from him that night and was like, I'm not answering that. He shouldn't be calling me. He has his court date tomorrow. Like, I just want to be left alone. But he keeps calling over and over and over again. So finally she answers. I honestly understand, because if you've been with someone for years, and even if they have harmed you, there's clearly some level of like, she cared about him at some point. And if he's calling over and over again, she's probably wondering if he's okay or whatever. So this is in no way her fault that she answers and does what she does next. But she answers the phone. He says that he is so sorry. He never should have done that. He knows he messed up. She's too good for him. Whatever crap he's trying to say to like reel her back in. He says, I know we shouldn't be seeing each other. I know you're tired of me, but if I can just get some closure, if I can get one last hug, I will leave you alone forever. And unfortunately, she does agree. And at this point, when I heard this part of the story, I was like screaming through my phone. I was like, please don't go outside. Please don't go get one last hug. But again, this is not her fault. She is not to be blamed for any of this just because she goes out to give him one last hug. So she agrees, and she brings pepper spray, her phone, and keys. and goes outside to give him a hug. And I'm sure like alarm bells were going off in her head, but again, she cared about this guy at least at some point because they were together for so long. And for her, closure probably felt like the right thing. She probably wanted that closure to like heal from the process. So she goes outside and she's standing in the street and they go to hug. And in that moment, she hears a clicking sound, and that's him opening up a little switchblade, and he starts stabbing her as he's hugging her. She falls to the ground, he's on top of her, he's continuing to stab her, and she is screaming at this point. And again, this assault is also happening in the middle of the night, so there's no one around to see it. Two people hear her screams and come running over, and they see that this man is on top of this young woman stabbing her, and they immediately like are shouting for him to get off. They are calling 911, and as they are telling him to get off and like leave, he stands up, walks back to his car, and instead of leaving, gets another knife and goes back and starts stabbing her with that as well. And this is really hard for the two bystanders because obviously they want to like get involved, but he's a bigger guy and he has a knife. Like he could hurt them too. So they're kind of having to keep their distance while also telling 911 what's happening and trying to get him to stop. Fortunately, he does stop. He gets in his car and drives off. And at this point, the police arrive and she is not in good condition. She is barely clinging to life. In fact, it looks like she's dead. She's got cuts all over her face and arm, and her neck is slashed. Like, honestly, they thought she was dead when they first arrived. And then once they felt for a heartbeat, they felt like the tiniest little, like, thready, faint heartbeat, and were like, we have to medevac her now. She is probably not going to survive. Even though her throat had been slashed and she was barely clinging to life, she is able to whisper to the paramedics that are responding who did this to her. She's able to say it was her ex-boyfriend, Robert. And so now the police are able to go searching for him. So she is medevaced to a hospital, and she ends up being in surgery for almost 5 hours, and it was intense and awful. She was losing so much blood. She ended up having a stroke. Her brain and vital organs were not getting enough blood because she was bleeding so profusely, and it was just really, really awful. The one surgeon that worked on her was a trauma surgeon in the army, and he said the only other time he's seen wounds like and injuries this bad was when he was in the battlefield in Afghanistan. That is insane. So he, along with other like medical healthcare professionals, are working to save this girl's life. And at the same time, 3 hours after this happened, Robert is found slumped over the steering wheel of his car that had been run into a building. So he had tried to kill himself by taking a bunch of sleeping pills and running into this building. He was still alive. They ended up like waking him up and arresting him, and he is now in custody. So Melissa ends up fortunately surviving her surgery and spends a week in the ICU. Unfortunately, like I said, she had that stroke. She was covered in injuries, and she actually was partially paralyzed. Her doctors told her mother that she likely would never be able to talk again because of the way her throat was cut, and she likely would never be able to walk on her own again. But Melissa, as we have seen, is a strong, determined woman, and she was like, I'm not letting this beat me. So she began to heal and go to therapy and do all these different surgeries and do physical therapy. And I'm sure it was a painstaking process. Like, I cannot imagine all the things she went through. And so tons of surgery, tons of physical therapy, and she's slowly starting to heal, walk again, she can talk, and she kind of defied a lot of the odds. Like, it's amazing that she survived. By the way, in case you were wondering how many times he stabbed her 32 times, and she somehow managed to survive. But even more incredibly, while she's doing all this, she is still in college, and she still manages somehow to graduate on time. I don't know how she did that. I don't know how she was able to do that at all, but she still manages to graduate with her degree on time. Again, incredible. In February of 2013, so 2 years later, Melissa unfortunately did have to face him in court and retell the story of what happened to her while literally looking him in the eye. And she says he was like staring her down. It felt like he was like boring 2 holes into the side of her head. Like he was just relentlessly staring at her. So obviously that's incredibly traumatizing and terrifying, but she retells what happens, and to everyone's surprise, he pleads guilty to attempted first-degree murder. So he is charged and sentenced to life in prison, fortunately. Melissa also made it her mission to learn about every single person who was on scene or helped her in some way to survive. So whether it was first responders and paramedics that first arrived, or the police that first arrived, or if it was one of the surgeons that was operating on her for hours, whoever it was, she made a point to know every single one of them. And one man in particular, his name was Cameron Hill. He was one of the Clearwater Fire and Rescue Team responders. He was one of the first on the scene, and he very much remembers like her story and that night that he was on the scene, because it was horrific. And she got to know him over this journey of meeting everyone, and they end up starting to date. And they date for a really long time, and they're very happy together. He's a great guy, and it just seemed like a really sweet match. So Melissa and Cameron are dating, and there's a really famous moment in 2015 where Melissa was being honored for everything she survived with a first pitch at a Rays baseball game. And this is very famous. You can look it up on YouTube. This is when Cameron proposes to her. So he proposed to her while she was standing on home plate. Again, you can see the video on YouTube or really anywhere. It's a very famous video. And in 2017, they ended up getting married. And many of the first responders that were there that she'd become friends with were at her wedding. So one of the police officers was one of her bridesmaids. One of the surgeons was there as well. And it was just like a really sweet moment. She was very, very grateful for all the people that helped her. And I'm so glad that that is the case, because I don't always get to give you guys like happy endings. I don't always get to tell you guys like something good happened at the end of a story, but she was able to marry a man who is fantastic, who is safe. They're still together today, and he just seems like a really good guy, clearly, because he's like a part of this fire and rescue team. And not only that, they're happy, they're married, she is healing, she is helping other people, she has become an advocate and resource for other victims and survivors of domestic violence. She's on social media a little bit, and like you can see some of the stuff that she's done. She's just incredible. She took this really horrific, awful thing that she survived and is using that to help others, which just shows how incredible of a person she is. So I'm glad that I get to give you guys like a happy ending to one of these stories. The strength that she had to survive everything that Robert, her ex-boyfriend, did to her is amazing. And Robert is absolute garbage. Hopefully he will rot in prison for the rest of his life and never get to see the light of day again. I do want to say that if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, you do not have to stay in that cycle. You do not have to stay silent. There are resources out there. I'm going to put some things in the caption and on the screen and stuff like that, because it is not love to be harmed. It is not love to be abused. And if you are feeling unsafe in your relationship and you need out, there are resources and things that can help you, and you are not alone in that situation. Thank you guys so much for watching this video or listening to my podcast. However you are getting these stories with me, I really appreciate you being here. Again, if you could like and subscribe and give a comment on your thoughts on this case, it really means a lot to me. I also love to see you guys on TikTok, where I tell like shorter versions of these stories. If you guys want to hear any other cases, you can comment them. I also have a link in the description of all of my bios where you can request a case on a form. So please let me know if you guys have a case you would like me to cover, and I love you all. Thank you for being here. I'll see you on the next episode.